Now, as we speak, many of the people who were on that doomed airliner, their remains are still on the ground there in eastern Ukraine, uncollected, unclaimed. CNN crews and other witnesses there tell us that the recovery operation is just a mess. It's not clear who is in charge or what is happening next. Unfocused, unsecure, and really without, as I said, anyone in charge.
No question. At the same time, international reaction, as you just saw, Western leaders are demanding Russia get those rebel groups in line. One U.S. senator has had enough of what he sees as Russia's aggression and has introduced a resolution to punish Russia. Senator Dan Coats, Indiana Republican, said this recently, quote, "When you have a bully in the playground, you've got to stand up to him. You can't sit there and calculate the potential economic risk." Obviously a criticism of the Obama administration policy so far. And on the phone with me now, we have the man behind those words, Senator Dan Coats. Senator, I want to see, you said you want to kick Russia out of the G8. You want to close U.S. consulates there. I mean, these are tough words. Looking at Russia's behavior since the crash, its denial of any involvement and, in fact, mounting evidence that Russia supplied these weapon systems to the rebels who shot this plane down. Has this done anything to change your mind, or are you more resolved now, I imagine, to take these steps?
No, I'm even more. I mean, what Russia had done to Crimea, what the disturbances that they are fomenting in eastern Ukraine, they're going to keep doing things like this if we don't stand up to them. Now, this is really a defining moment for the EU. Let me say this. We need to verify and prove that Russia had some role in this effort here. They're the ones that have sort of lit the fires in eastern Ukraine. They're the ones that are supplying the weapons. Their proxies may have been responsible, but that still makes Russia complicit. So I think they need to pay a very, very heavy price for what they've done previously and what their role might be here. Obviously, we want to verify that first. But I've been calling it tough sanctions for quite some time now, on the basis of the fact that Russia's been the aggressor and Russia holds the responsibility to settle this thing down if they choose to do so.
You know, the question, Senator Coats, is what's going to make a difference here? The U.S., Europe, they've used modest sanctions to this point. They've certainly used very public condemnation. I want you to listen to what Congressman Adam Schiff said to us just a few moments ago, Democratic congressman, member of the House Intelligence Committee. He raising the question about whether it's time to help Ukraine militarily. Have a listen.
The only other option that we haven't employed yet is escalating our support for Ukraine militarily. We're providing them a lot of economic support. We're providing them intelligence support, and some are calling for military support. There is a risk, though, that if we go too far in that direction, we escalate the crisis rather than try to contain it. But I think we can explore other ways that we can help Ukraine militarily without getting into sophisticated weapon systems, things that would help them logistically, things that would help them deal with some of the problems created by the separatists.
Senator Coats, to this point, the military support for Ukraine has been simple sorts of supplies, some electronic generators, bulletproof vests, etc. Do you think the U.S. should be considering real weapons, even the possibility of heavy weapons, to right the balance between the Ukrainian military and the pro-Russian rebels, which are armed by Russia?
Well, depending on what Russia's response is to this and the verification that we are looking for, I think that is something that ought to be on the table to be considered. But what has been done to date with some of these sanctions is far too little and far too late. We have not taken a strong lead. The Europeans have not taken a strong lead in terms of imposing economic sanctions that would cripple the Russian economy. We need to drive down their stock market. We need to stop their exports of arms. We need to stop find ways and to bypass their export of energy to Europe. And I think it's a defining moment for Europe. You're going to just sit back and let Russia nibble away piece after piece of Eastern Europe. As long as no one stands up to them and really makes them pay a price, it's going to continue. So I'd rather see them step up now with tough sanctions, particularly economic sanctions, and then we can weigh what we can do and what we might need to do in terms of giving more support to the Ukrainian army.
Senator Coats, Poppy Harlow here in New York. On the point of economic sanctions, what we know is clear that the sanctions that have been stepped up by President Obama, this administration, clearly haven't really made a dent to Russia in terms of it almost fortifies their will. I will say, though, it's very different for European countries in terms of the economic impact they face if they do agree to significantly ratchet up sanctions along with the United States, how do you think the U.S. Congress, the President, can persuade Europe to get on board with that, given what we know economically it can do to them?
Well, the President, I know, has been in touch with European leaders, but Europe needs to make a decision as to how it is going to respond to this. They would like to do it with us, and I think if we can get agreement on much tougher sanctions imposed on Russia, particularly in the economic front, and willingness to support, if necessary, the Ukrainians as they're fighting with this. But really the effort here is to get Putin to tell them separatists to stand down, and he's the one person that can do that, but he doesn't see that he's paying the price for not doing that. And until we stand up to this bully in the playground, it's just going to continue.
Senator Coates, I wonder if we reach the point where the president cannot get Europe on board, that there's still difficulty in building European consensus and the Europeans aren't willing to face their own economic costs from sanctions against Russia and indeed dependency on Russian natural gas. What if the U.S. took steps on its own? The U.S. has tremendous economic leverage. It could ban Russian companies from the U.S. financial markets, from U.S. debt. That would have an enormous cost. Should the U.S. act on its own in the event it cannot get Europe on board?
We might have to, for the sake of the future of stability in Europe. But as I said before, this is a defining moment for Europe. And if they back down now or they're tepid in terms of their response, that's going to create a very serious situation. Acting United States and Europe in dealing with this, with tough sanctions against Russia and making them pay a major price is actually, I think, is absolutely necessary to achieve a result here without escalating this process. And so whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the fighting and the support for separatists, supplying weapons or whatever, and perhaps this missile launcher, Russia is complicit in all this, and that's where we need to target our efforts.
Senator Coates, Republican from Indiana, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, our thanks to you, Senator. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Meantime, European officials at the crash site call this part of eastern Ukraine, quote, the world's biggest crime scene. It is also one of the most dangerous places in the world right now because of all of the fighting that is going on in the middle of an explosive and unstable cross-border armed conflict.